What if I told you that the guy catching the most fish on the lake is actually the worst angler out there? I know, that sounds crazy. We've all been taught that the person with the most bites is the winner for the day. But today, we're going to tear that idea apart. We're diving deep into the controversial concept of dumb fish versus smart fish. By the end of this video, you will look at that successful angler in a completely new light. And more importantly, you'll understand why your quiet, slow day on the water might actually be a sign that you're on the verge of catching the fish of a lifetime. So, here's a question to get us started. Do you believe a fish is just a fish and they all act the same? Let me know in the comments right now, because I am about to seriously challenge that belief. Let's set the scene. For generations, the story at the boat ramp has been all about numbers. How many did you get? Is the first question anyone asks. This has conditioned us to believe that constant action is the goal. We see pro tournaments where a full live well is a sign of success. This mentality has driven lure design and popular techniques for decades. It's all about getting a reaction strike, triggering aggression, and getting as many bites as possible. We do it because that's how we were taught. That's what we see online. But what this numbers game completely ignores is the impact of fishing pressure. It ignores the fact that on any given body of water, there are two entirely different populations of fish living side by side, the rookies and the veterans. And the tactics you use to catch one will make you completely invisible to the other. First, let's define the so-called dumb fish. These aren't literally stupid. They're just naive. They're often the younger, more aggressive fish in a system, the 1 to 2-year-olds. Think of them like teenagers at a buffet. They're hungry, competitive, and haven't learned to be cautious yet. They see a flashy, noisy lure whiz by, and their first instinct is to smash it, either out of hunger or aggression. They haven't been hooked before. They haven't seen their buddies get pulled out of the water. Their entire existence is just a simple equation. See food, eat food. Or see something annoying, attack it. These are the fish that make up the bulk of many anglers' catches. They provide action, they bend the rod, and they feed the ego, but they are not the survivors. So who catches these fish? It's the angler using the most common high-impact techniques. Picture the guy throwing a big rattling lipless crankbait and burning it back to the boat, or the one using a bright flashy spinnerbait with giant thumping blades. These lures are designed to cause a commotion and draw fish in from a distance. They work exceptionally well on the naive fish we just talked about. Why? Because these fish haven't yet learned to associate that loud rattling or that bright flash with danger. To them, it's just a signal of a potential meal. It's an easy, obvious presentation that stands out. This is the low-hanging fruit of the fishing world, and many anglers are perfectly content picking it all day long. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but it's a different game entirely. Now let's talk about the fish you really want, the smart ones. These are the survivors, the older, bigger, more cautious fish in the lake, the ones that have seen it all. They've been hooked and released. They've seen countless lures. They've learned to associate the splash of a cast, the whir of a trolling motor, and the vibration of certain baits with a very real threat. These fish didn't get big by being reckless. They got big by being smart. Their feeding behavior is completely different. They're more selective, they feed during shorter windows, and they are masters of telling the difference between a real bluegill and a quarter-ounce piece of painted lead with a skirt. They are the true challenge. Catching one of these fish isn't just luck, it's a game of chess. And this isn't just some fishing doc theory. There's real science behind it. Studies on fish behavior, particularly on largemouth bass and trout, have shown that they learn from negative experiences. It's called conditioned response. In controlled environments, bass that were hooked on a specific type of lure would actively avoid that same lure for months, and sometimes permanently. They learn to recognize not just the lure itself, but the sounds and vibrations associated with it. They pass on this caution, in a way. When one fish in a school spooks, the others react. This is how a population of fish becomes educated. They are literally taught by anglers to be wary of anything that seems out of the ordinary. This is the root of the problem we are discussing. The driving force behind this education is fishing pressure. Let's imagine two different lakes. The first is a remote private lake that sees maybe 10 anglers a year. The fish there are likely to be aggressive and naive. You could probably throw a beer can with a hook on it and get a bite. Now, picture your local public lake, the one with a boat ramp that's packed every Saturday morning. The fish in that lake have seen every lure in the tackle warehouse catalog. They hear boats all day, every day. They have been caught, measured, photographed, and released hundreds of times. A fish in that environment is not the same animal. It's a completely different creature, behaviorally speaking. It's a veteran of 1,000 battles, and it's not going to fall for the same old tricks. So, how does this change your approach on the water? It means you have to make a conscious choice. Are you playing the numbers game, or are you hunting for a giant? If you're hunting, you have to stop thinking like the average angler. The average angler is making noise, using fast presentations, and targeting the aggressive dumb fish. To catch the smart ones, you have to do the opposite. You have to embrace the quiet, the slow, and the subtle. It's a fundamental shift from trying to force a reaction to trying to present an offering so natural and enticing that a wise old fish can't resist it. This is where finesse fishing isn't just a technique. It becomes a philosophy for the entire day. Looks like a great time. Meanwhile, you're getting blow-up after blow-up from small 1-pound bass. It looks like a great time. Meanwhile, you're fishing that same bank, but you're 20 yards behind him. You're throwing a small, natural-colored finesse worm on a light line with no weight. You're letting it sink slowly, doing almost nothing. You might only get one bite all morning, but that one bite isn't a violent explosion. It's a subtle tick in your line. You set the hook, and it's a 5-pound giant. That fish ignored his noisy plug, but it saw your silent, slow-falling worm as a safe, easy meal. You didn't catch more fish, but you caught the one that mattered. This brings us to a crucial point: stealth. The smart fish are incredibly sensitive to their environment. The sound of you dropping your pliers on the boat deck can alert every big fish within 50 feet. The constant whirring of a trolling motor on high, the plop of a heavy lure hitting the water. These are like alarm bells to a pressured fish. Think about how a predator hunts in the wild. They are silent. They are patient. As an angler targeting smart fish, you must become a predator. This means making long casts, using your trolling motor sparingly and on low power, and being mindful of every sound you make. It means using the wind to your advantage to drift silently into a spot. This isn't just about fishing, it's about woodsmanship on the water. Let's dig a little deeper into lure selection. While the other guy is throwing loud, obnoxious baits, your tackle box should focus on realism and subtlety. This means smaller profiles, natural colors that match the local forage, and baits with more subtle actions. Instead of a double-bladed spinnerbait, maybe it's a single swim bait on a light jig head. Instead of a deep-diving crankbait that rattles like a bag of bolts, maybe it's a silent suspending jerkbait that you let sit motionless for 10, even 20 seconds at a time. The goal is no longer to scream, "Look at me." Instead, you want your lure to whisper, "I'm an easy, defenseless meal." It's a completely different language, and it's the one that smart fish understand. The mental game is arguably the hardest part of this entire strategy. It takes supreme confidence to fish slowly and get fewer bites while you watch someone else catching fish. Our brains are wired to seek validation, and in fishing, a bite is validation. Resisting the urge to switch to what he's using is incredibly difficult. You have to constantly remind yourself that you are not fishing for the same fish he is. You are on a different mission. You are hunting. You have to trust your knowledge of fish behavior and have the patience to wait for that one single quality bite. It's a test of discipline. Most anglers fail this test within the first hour of a slow day. Think about it from the fish's perspective. A big old bass is sitting under a dock. For 3 hours, she's seen flashy spinnerbaits, noisy crankbaits, and big bulky jigs splash down right next to her. She ignores them all. They're obvious fakes, and they signal danger. Then, something different happens. A small, weightless plastic stick bait lands softly in the water, 10 feet away. It sinks slowly, naturally, with a subtle wobble. It looks just like a dying worm or leech. It does nothing to alarm her. It looks safe. It looks easy. After watching it for 30 seconds, her predatory instinct finally takes over. That is the bite you're waiting for. That is the fish you are targeting. It's a battle of wits, not a race for numbers. This concept also applies heavily to line and leader choice. The angler catching the dumb fish is probably using heavy, thick line because it's strong and easy to manage. But a wise old fish, especially in clear water, can see that line. Using a lighter main line, and especially a long fluorocarbon leader, is non-negotiable when targeting smart fish. Fluorocarbon is nearly invisible underwater. The difference between 10-pound test and 6-pound test might not seem like much to us, but to a fish that has spent its life evading predators, it's the difference between a safe meal and an obvious trap. It's another one of those 1% details that, when combined, make a 100% difference. Let's connect this to location. The most obvious, easy-to-reach spots are where the dumb fish get caught. The first point coming out of the marina, the riprap right by the boat ramp, the most prominent underwater hump on the map. These spots get hammered with pressure. The smart fish learn to avoid these areas, especially during peak hours. They might move to less obvious cover. Instead of the main point, they might be on a subtle secondary point 50 yards away. Instead of the big, isolated laydown tree, they might be tucked under a small, single overhanging branch that everyone else ignores. Finding the smart fish often means fishing the spots that other anglers overlook. The timing of your fishing trip also plays a massive role. The average angler fishes from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on a Saturday. This is when boat traffic is highest and the pressure is at its peak. The smartest, biggest fish know this. They often feed heavily during low light periods, at dawn, at dusk, or even at night. Or they might feed during the middle of the week when the lake is quiet. By simply adjusting your schedule to avoid peak pressure, you dramatically increase your chances of encountering a big, smart fish that has its guard down. You're not just avoiding the crowds, you're specifically targeting the feeding window of the fish you want to catch. Now, let's consider the retrieve itself. The angler catching the dumb fish is often using a steady mechanical retrieve, a constant cranking, a rhythmic jigging. Smart fish have seen this 1,000 times. Your retrieve needs to be erratic and natural. When you're fishing a jerkbait, make it pause for an uncomfortably long time. When you're dragging a jig, stop it completely for several seconds before giving it a tiny little shake. A real creature doesn't move in a perfect rhythm. It stops, it starts, it darts, it pauses. By breaking the cadence and introducing imperfection into your retrieve, you are mimicking life. And that is what fools a fish that has seen every artificial presentation imaginable. Another powerful tool in this chess match is downsizing. When the pressure is high and the obvious baits are being ignored, going smaller can be the secret weapon. This applies to everything: a smaller lure profile, a lighter jig head, a thinner line, a 3-inch swim bait instead of a 5-inch one, a 1/4 ounce jig instead of a 1/2 ounce one. This works for 2 reasons. First, a smaller meal is a less risky proposition for a cautious fish. Second, smaller baits are often a more accurate imitation of the natural forage. In many fisheries, the dominant food source isn't giant gizzard shad. It's small minnows and invertebrates. Matching the hatch isn't just a fly fishing term. It's a critical strategy for outsmarting educated fish. Let's be clear, this is not an argument to always fish slow or always use finesse tactics. There are times and places where a fast, aggressive presentation is the right call, especially when fish are actively feeding or the water is heavily stained. The point is not that one way is always right and the other is always wrong. The point is to understand what kind of fish you are targeting with your chosen technique. If you are throwing a loud, fast lure, you are intentionally filtering for the aggressive, naive fish. If you are fishing a slow, subtle bait, you are intentionally filtering for the cautious, educated fish. You need to be aware of the choice you are making with every cast. Think of the satisfaction that comes from this approach. Anyone can get lucky and catch a dumb fish. It's fun, but there's not a lot of skill involved. But when you spend an hour dissecting a single piece of cover, making silent casts with a light line and a subtle bait, and you finally feel that faint thump and set the hook on a true giant, that's a different feeling. That is the feeling of outsmarting a worthy adversary. You didn't just trick it, you convinced it. You won the chess match. That single catch is more rewarding than 100 of the easy ones. It's a memory that will stick with you for years. I remember a specific trip on a heavily pressured lake. For hours, I watched boat after boat go down a bank, throw in spinnerbaits and crankbaits, and catch in a few small keepers. I waited. When they left, I drifted in silently. I picked up a wacky-rigged Senko on 6-pound line. I made a long cast to a tiny patch of shade under a willow tree, a spot that every other boat had ignored. I let it sink for what felt like an eternity. Nothing. I was about to reel in when I saw my line just faintly twitch. I reeled up the slack and leaned into it. The water exploded. After a long fight on that light line, I landed my personal best from that lake. That fish had watched dozens of lures go by that day. But that silent, natural presentation was the one it couldn't resist. So, what is the ultimate payoff for adopting this mindset? It's not about catching more fish. In fact, on many days, you will catch fewer fish. The payoff is that the average size of your catch will go way up. You will stop wasting your time with the aggressive little ones and start focusing your efforts on the true trophies that live in your waters. You will become a more thoughtful, more observant, and ultimately a more effective angler. You will learn to read the water, understand fish behavior, and appreciate the subtlety of the sport. You will stop being a lure chucker and start being a true hunter, and that transformation is the greatest prize of all. So, let's bring it all together. The next time you're on the water and you see that guy across the cove catching fish one after another, take a second before you get frustrated. Don't immediately reach for the same lure he's using. Instead, ask yourself, what kind of fish is he catching? He might just be cleaning up the rookies, the easy targets. He's making a lot of noise and leaving the wise old veterans undisturbed, creating the perfect opportunity for the patient, thinking angler. For you, the most powerful shift you can make is to realize that a lack of bites isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's a sign that your presentation is too refined for the dumb fish, and you are in the right zone, playing the right game for a fish that truly matters. This change in perspective from quantity to quality will not only make you a better angler, it will lead you to the fish you'll be telling stories about for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for watching. If this video changed how you think about a slow day of fishing, do me a favor and hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed for more content that breaks down the old school rules. Now, I want to hear from you. What's the smartest fish you've ever had to outwit? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one.